We're ready and we're rolling. A-Town.
Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling, man.
Why is there nothing popping up?
Dude, there's stuff popping up. It's just a different view.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's like a Nolan movie, okay? Everything has a different look about it now. Okay? This is part 1. This is part 2. Hello, everyone. We're back. We just came back from Oppenheimer.
We're depressed.
We're so depressed right now.
We're tired.
We am death right now.
Yeah.
We am become it, bro.
We're not the destroyer of worlds.
No, come on. That's giving us way too much credit.
We're just death.
Yeah, come on.
We feel like death.
All right, we saw Oppenheimer, and we're fresh. We kept it the lid on it. Afterwards, Jacob's like, I don't know, are we doing a podcast? I'm like, I don't know what we're doing. And then I was like, you know what? We're doing a podcast.
Yes.
And if we want to release it, we're releasing it.
Yes.
It's yeah.
Deep movie.
I was trying to relate it to the movie, be like, we'll create it, but there's no decision on whether or not we release it. But we're gonna drop this podcast. Yeah. Sorry, it's late. Yeah, no. So we saw it, and holy cow! Well, let's just say first, what did you think about it, Jacob?
I think it's a great movie.
I think it is fantastic.
It's one of Nolan's best.
I'd say it is Nolan's best.
It is definitely his best mixed sound movie.
We could hear things. It was great.
You could hear things. It wasn't overtly loud in parts where it didn't need to be.
Exactly. And for all you nerds out there, I'm sorry to be so antagonistic. I'm playing. We did see it in the 70 millimeter, so I don't want to hear anyone being like, you didn't really see the movie, bro. We saw it in 70 millimeter.
Not IMAX.
Okay, well, just sue us. We don't have that capability.
There's only 20 theaters that can do 70 millimeter and IMAX.
Ooh, that's right. We got through the previews, and then we heard the...
We sat in the back. We heard the film. We looked at each other. We're like, oh my God, that's loud. This is going to be very distracting. But we got through it.
Yeah, we heard whirring, and I just was like, we made a mistake. Because we could have either sit in the back row, the very back row, or the second back row. We sat in the very back, right next to the projector. But it was great.
For me, I loved it.
You know what?
It gave me a feel to the movie.
It's the flicker. It's that flicker of light where it's almost inconsistent, or it's that great film thing that I'm like, you know what? I'm glad we did it.
Yes,
even with the whirring, it was worth it. We both knew. Well, it's not like we're historians, but we both kind of researched Oppenheimer
guys.
a bit. We're dudes.
We like history.
Yeah,
I was talking to one of my friends before the movie came out. I was like, yeah, I'm watching a ton of documentaries.
Exactly.
She's like, why? I'm like, I just like history. And she's like, why do all guys like history?
Dude, there's something about it. When you got the WW in there, guys are like, I'm there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We'll read
World
about
War?
it.
Hell yeah.
Good Lord.
But we saw the movie in high school, and even in college.
Dude, scratched. High school, scratched
right
Oppenheimer.
over Oppenheimer.
Scratched him, bro. I know my high school teacher, he kind of, he spent some time on it, maybe the moral and ethical dilemma of it, but it was nothing. The Pacific Theater, it was like a greatest hits
you
thing.
You go over it in a day.
Oh, my God.
When you go through a month of the European conflict.
Yeah, dude. But this one, oh, man, I just loved it. Anyway, I was more familiar with Los Alamos Oppenheimer and then Almost Oppenheimer. That was post. All I knew really was the quote and that he was against the H-bomb.
Yes.
That was all I really knew about.
I didn't know about the whole, he basically got dragged through the mud.
Right. They completely they really went after his reputation.
Yeah, I did not know that.
The government wise.
Yeah. They released a new documentary like a week before the movie came out. And I watched it. It's a good documentary. So they discussed that more. And that was the first time I ever heard about that. So, yes, we're not full-on historians. But I feel like this movie was... it respected the history.
Well, actually, this is a funny thing. Because I was telling some of the people when I was saying, hey, I'm going to see Oppenheimer tonight. I was like, you know what? I hope they at least mention Heisenberg. Yes. I know it's really going to be focused on Oppenheimer.
Because he did spend time with Heisenberg.
Oh, dude. Heisenberg was a real big deal, so I was, especially in quantum mechanics, and so I was like, I hope they at least mention it. Dude, they did one better. They really went through, his education, and it was great to see, because, he was homesick in Europe and all that in Cambridge, and he did try to, not try to, but he did poison an apple for a professor. They covered that in the movie, and I was like, wow.
I wish they spent just a couple more minutes
Dude.
Just a couple.
Oh, no. I could have done another 15 minutes of just
I
pre-bomb,
I wish they
pre-Manhattan
would.
Project.
I wish they would have shown the more awkward Oppenheimer
I know exactly what you're saying.
before they went to the straight charismatic and womanizer that he was before when he took on the persona.
I know exactly, dude. They were so efficient in the what am I saying? Not the exposition, but just establishing characters. They did it in the most efficient way possible.
Yes.
There wasn't nuances. They're like, no, we're making this as clear as day.
Yes.
Where like the first time you really get to see his marriage with Emily Blunt, her character, she's an alcoholic. You can tell right away. They didn't beat around the bush. Florence Pugh's character, you meet her at a communist party, so you're like, straight up, you know what's going on.
And that she's not mentally stable.
Yeah. And then, Oppenheimer, they establish every character so efficiently that it's great. And kind of like, wow, okay, they're really, and they know the character, obviously, when you're watching it, but then you're like, yeah, I could live in this world a little longer. Yeah. Especially pre.
Obviously, I don't want the movie to be 4 hours longer, but they could have just spent 10 more minutes pre.
Well, because I think the thing with the education that I wish they did more of, because they focused more literally on Cambridge than they did when he went to, I think it was Leipzig in Germany, where it was really the theoretical part. Because, in Cambridge, he sucked at the laboratory stuff.
Yeah.
And the experimental portion.
When he goes to Heisenberg's class, they make it seem like he was only there for one lecture.
Well, it was quick. Yeah, it was a quick stop by.
But he was there for a couple.
I don't know how closely and how often he was with Heisenberg. All I know is he liked Leipzig, of course it's German, so I don't know if I'm saying the right thing. He liked it considerably more than Cambridge, and obviously he flourished because he was a theoretical physicist.
And I think we are not historians.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
Big disclaimer.
I was sure they met more than once.
I'm sure they met more than once. I think, like the rest of the movie, it was very efficient.
Yeah.
But dude, this movie's cast is a killer cast.
It's huge. Everyone, I think everyone did a great job.
Dude, no matter what, the smallest part, you're like, holy shit, they got a real high up there actor.
Yeah.
And it's insane. But this movie was the first one where I'm like, oh, people want to work with Nolan.
Oh, for sure. Did you hear the whole story with Matt Damon?
No.
He was literally taking a break from acting. He told his wife, he was like, hey, I'm going to take a break from acting for a little bit, spend time with you, the family, blah, blah, blah. But he was like, except if Christopher Nolan calls me.
Oh, wow.
And then I think a month later, Nolan called. And he was like, well, I gotta go.
Dude, it's a great cast. And it's the first movie where both Jacob and I feel like Nolan's finally going to get some awards. He's going to get some statues to put at home from this movie.
He deserves it.
Dude, this movie was
great.
I
hope that there's not some dumb Oscar-grabbing movie.
An Oscar bait movie that you're just like, no one watched this. What are you doing?
Yeah,
see, that seems now just quick sidebar. It always seems like when you do well at the box office or even in just publicity, if you're highly, if the critics or the audience really liked it, it almost works against you in the Academy Awards. It seems.
Yeah, because you're not small indie.
Yeah, and people are like, look, you've already been acknowledged. We don't need to acknowledge you. But no, this guy, I mean, he deserves it. This movie, it's one of the real. I was like, it's been a long time since I watched a movie that made me feel like, wow, this is a real, work. This is a proper movie.
It made you think about real world.
Yes.
When the movies we're watching now lately, we're all consumed with their universe.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in their universe.
It's world building. This one's like, no. This is talking about why our world is the way it is.
This makes you think, especially the ending.
Yes.
Makes you all like it's a ride the whole time, this movie. And then it gets to the end, and then you're like, oh, wait, this is, like, real.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about the ending later, but yeah, that's how I felt. How'd you like how they told the story?
Okay, here's the thing. Now, thank you. Thank you so much for asking that question. You're like Sean Evans right now. That's a great question. Now, I am a vocal person about Nolan's story structure, and kind of his non-linear storytelling.
Yes.
In the past, just to my friends, have mentioned that Dunkirk is a prime example of this, of what I don't like when he makes a story unnecessarily convoluted in a time sense, where he's like, you know what, I don't need to tell things chronologically.
Yes.
I can do it in any order I want. I think it works against Dunkirk, and I think Dunkirk suffers from it, and I don't think it's a very good movie because of it. This one does have a non-linear storytelling, but I think it works in this movie because I think they wanted it's like they wanted both ends. They wanted the bomb to be in the third act.
Yes.
So if you told it chronologically with what they covered in this movie, if they didn't do it in this way,
It would happen in the first act.
it would almost be at the end of the first act, or just very like in the middle of the second act. It would be.
I think at the end of the first act or start of the second act. Because they spent a ton of time in the after the bomb.
Yes.
In his deposition and Strauss's I don't know what it is, but
exactly. Well, we'll get to that, but yeah, with Strauss's and the legality of everything and his security clearance and his hearing. Yep. And then also the hydrogen bomb. So they do cover so much in this movie, and it's great. So I think it works in this movie, his nonlinear storytelling, because the story structure overall works in its favor.
And it's pretty clear because he does the black and white.
Yes.
When they're doing Strauss's side.
Right.
And then when it goes to Oppenheimer's, it's not a trial, but for his security clearance, his appeal of it.
Yeah, it's color.
It's colored, but you can tell everyone's older.
Yep.
And then when it goes back closer
everyone looks
to
young.
Los Alamos, they look a little bit younger than they are.
It's very distinct and it works. So
yeah, you are clear what part you are at.
Right.
So, because his appeal too is only in one room, so you know when
you're there.
Yeah, they don't step out of the room or nothing.
Exactly. It's not confusing as an audience at all, and it's the exact opposite of Dunkirk, where it doesn't.
Learned.
Dude, well, I hope so, because Dunkirk suffered from it. This is actually serviced by it. I think it works really well. What did you think of the structure of it all?
I loved it because too, it's compelling as a story because if you don't know the history all that much, it's very compelling because Robert Downey Jr.'s character.
Yeah. In
the beginning, you think it's one way, and they switch it right at the end. And you're like, oh. So, like, if you don't know the history all that well, it's still, like, if you don't know it, it's a cool story still. And it still hits you hard. And if you know it, you're like, oh, this is interesting. So, I love the way they did it.
It's so good.
I'm glad they did the black and white because if they didn't, it would be a little confusing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I also just like the stylistic choice of it. I mean, everything looks so great in black and white in this movie, and then everything is so clear and it's great. I mean, honestly, there's just a few experimental moments that was a little like I'm like, oh, that's a choice, but it's not a mark against the movie. Let's see, we'll get to the experimental parts, but it's a longer movie. It's 3 hours, and I can say that I didn't mind it.
No.
It was great.
At no point, like we saw Avatar together.
Yes.
Long movie. We thought the entire second act was useless.
Dude.
You know me. I never go to the bathroom during the movie. I will suffer through it, because I don't want to miss a part of the movie. I walked out in Avatar.
Yeah, you were like, I gotta go to the bathroom.
This movie, I had no problems. I was like, actually, the dude next to me, his phone went off.
Oh, wow.
And a lot in the movie happened. A lot. But it was only 40 minutes into it. I was like, oh my God. We're in for a ride. And I do not mind. But at no point was I like, come on, let's get this moving. Let's get this movie.
Dude, from the
I don't know
start,
if it's a guy's perspective.
It might be a real guy movie. Oh, it might be. I know because I know sometimes when like when I'll get like really into a movie or something, I'll show it. I'm like, I show it to my parents. I'm like, guys, you got to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And then if my mom's not digging it, she's like, I don't know, maybe it's just a guy thing. And so I don't know, maybe it is because it's I don't know what it is, but
It's
yeah,
history,
no, maybe
it's
guys
World War
just like
II, it's the bomb.
It's the inner dad of us all, where we're just like, we want to hear about World War II. But no, this one was, it's so good, and from the start, and it really rewards you if you do know about this guy. If you did research him a little bit, if you watched a little bit of a documentary, this movie really rewards you for that, and you're like, oh wow, that's really awesome to see this guy in Cambridge. No, like anything. God, it's just so good. I can't even really organize my thoughts in real time. So what's I going to say? Okay, so after the whole Cambridge thing, he goes. Well, it's tough actually. We're not going to go beat by beat in this movie because it's going to be so tough with the linear aspect of it. But he, before he gets recruited as the project leader for Manhattan, he goes to work in, I think, Berkeley. Anyway,
Yep.
And he meets the experimental physics lead, played by Josh Hartnett.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a minute since I've seen Josh Hartnett in anything. Me being a Guy Ritchie fan, I did see him in Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre. But I thought he was like, oh, okay, that's Josh Hartnett. That's what he's been up to. But it didn't really. Wasn't really him. Sorry, Josh. I wasn't really impressed with him in the Guy Ritchie movie. In this movie, he might be one of the favorite characters in the movie. I think he did a great job.
I'm telling you, I don't think a single person did bad.
I'm with Jacob, actually. Looking back on it, there's not one performer that did a bad job. You know what? I had my doubts because he has a particular cadence, so it's working against him. But Rami Malek was okay in the movie. But he had that typical.
I did not know he was going to be in the movie.
Dude, they're literally in the smallest part. You're just like, holy cow! They put Harry S. Truman in this movie for like what 3-4 minutes? Would you say?
No, not even 4 minutes. I think 2 minutes.
2 minutes. And I was watching it. I'm like, oh, wait. And I looked at Jacob. He smiled at me. I'm like, I think he knows. It's Gary Oldman.
Yep.
And he did a great job because it's Gary Oldman. But I'm like, oh my gosh, they just got Gary Oldman in this movie for 2 minutes.
I love that they put that part in the movie. Because remember, we talked about it
right before the movie. Jacob was telling me about that meeting between Oppenheimer and Truman, and I'm like, oh, Jacob must be loving this scene.
I loved it. I loved it because they got the crybaby scientist.
Dude, it was beat for beat. Like when Jacob was telling me about the meeting, I'm like, wow, Jacob really, like, it was just beat for beat. I'm like, this is great. So Josh Hartnett's great. And I think it's easier actually to go by character rather than the storylines. It might be. Anyway, so then he meets Florence Pugh, who plays Jean.
Yes.
His first relationship.
Yes.
She was a communist.
Damn commies. I'm telling you. Life would be so much easier without.
And then, she's also emotional, but he has a relationship with her. It's very toxic. Unstable. But it's just, it shows his repeated ties with the Communist Party and the length of it, the extent of it, and it really serves to the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and like history, we're not quite sure if he ever was fully committed.
Oh yeah.
And that movie plays that line.
Which is perfect. The movie does. There are a lot of speculated stuff that they do address in the movie, and they do it in the best way to actually say, yeah, it's speculated.
Like with the character Jean, in real life, her death was a little questionable and mysterious. And I love this detail. I brought it up to Will because I had to talk about it after the movie. This detail, when they are showing her death, the scene splits two ways. They're lining her, like she puts the pills on the ground in front of the tub. How they're describing it in the movie, they said, oh, she took pills and then she drowned herself in the tub, blah blah blah. But for a split second, it looks like a split in the film, like a slide was added. You see a hand with a black glove forcing her down, but then it cuts, and then it's her putting herself in, because her death is mysterious.
Yeah, there's obviously conspiracies with it and all that.
So, but I love that little detail where they put, like, hey, this could have happened.
Mm-hmm. Let's see who's in the movie. There's just a lot of then. Oh, Matt Damon shows up, tells him about it's the recruiting scene where he's looking for a lead for the Manhattan Project.
I will say he had the easiest probably role
Matt Damon?
for him. Like everyone else kind of like changed. Like when I saw someone, I wasn't like, oh, that's like Emily Blunt's character. I wasn't like, oh, that's Emily Blunt. When Matt Damon came on screen, like he didn't have to change his voice or anything.
I'm
you've
with
seen
you.
him do this role before,
Exactly.
but he was perfect for it.
Exactly. Okay, that's the perfect way to say it because it's going to sound harsh when I say it, but it seems like he didn't have to act much.
Yes.
But it seems like it almost like it was written with him in mind because he just fit it perfectly. Kind of the same with Robert Downey Jr., where it's just like they delivered.
Yeah, like
but
Robert,
it's not like they had to change
they
themselves.
didn't have to do anything really strenuous.
Yes, but they did a great job.
Yes. And I couldn't see someone else doing
I agree.
their role necessarily.
Oh God, it's so good. And then, we'll go because it was a headline. It made headlines. This was the first movie with some nudity in it, and I'm only bringing it up because it had an experimental part in it. But the first scene, I was like, oh wow, okay, that's a choice. What did you think of the nudity of the movie?
I mean, it wasn't anything crazy.
I know.
It didn't like. It wasn't like, oh, this takes me out of the film or anything like that.
It did kind of. Honestly, I'll say it was unexpected.
That one scene in the
that was the experimental part I was going to bring up. But the first time, because they're just at a party and they're talking, and it's kind of a harsh cut. Just to that, and I was like, "Whoa!"
It's a very Game of Thrones cut where they go from like just talking straight to just banging.
Yeah, and I don't honestly. I was trying to set up a joke for Jacob because beforehand he had a great line.
Well, we were like it leaked out 2 weeks before.
Yeah, that there's
going to be full frontal nudity with Florence and Murphy.
Yeah.
I was, and the way they were describing it was like, we're getting full on Murphy.
We're gonna get the full Murphy.
We did not get full on Murphy. We saw no dong. There's no. Well, there might have been some dong in that experimental shot where they do. Oh, it was a great. It was a great scene.
But when they did it, I was like, this is a choice.
Because
he's
in
the deposition.
Yeah, he's in the deposition. He has to explain his affair because he sleeps with Florence's character,
and they do a pan behind someone's back, and then he appears nude.
But it was a slow, like slow reveal, kind of like how those like filters now on TikTok and stuff do. Like they're swiping side to side and changing the image as it is going. It was like that.
Yep, they pan behind a character's back, and then all of a sudden he's in the nude. You're like, okay, and then they show Emily Blunt's character looking at him, kind of taken back. Yeah, because she
knows about the affair, and she hates that it's coming out.
But then you see a nude Florence Pugh on Cillian Murphy, and you're like, okay, this is a bit experimental here. This was a very this was a choice.
It was very clear though that they did not do it in that room. With everybody watching, you
clearly,
could kind of tell. Clearly, like put in.
Yeah, but it was still a choice, and I'm like, wow, that was a real that was a choice.
That you might have seen some dong. I couldn't tell. It was dark.
But yeah, the first nude scene, they did integrate the famous quote of his. I'm like, okay, I guess they needed to put that in there somewhere. And it was the "I am become death, destroyer of worlds." I'm like, okay, that was a bit kinky. But
yeah, because from my understanding, all the scientists were repeating that throughout all of Los Alamos. Like it wasn't their like saying, but they would talk about it a lot. They would read that passage from whatever it's from. I don't know
that's pretty interesting.
But all the scientists would talk about it like that way, not just him.
Well, that's so. Yeah, then after he gets recruited by Matt Damon, they go around the country recruiting other scientists for the Manhattan Project. He has a connection to New Mexico, and he loves New Mexico. They put it in Los Alamos.
They have a ranch.
Dude, it's
family.
Beautiful country too. The way this movie is shot is so good. There's not one bad shot in the movie.
No,
it's so good. And then, so they set up the thing, and then the project ensues, and it's just a real engaging look at what this was. I can't really get into too much detail, but it's just. You look, if you've seen the movie, you know. I mean, it's a real methodical look into these things, and it's told in such an engaging way. It's perfect.
Yes. And before we get too deep in conversation, because it's about to get really deep, Emily Blunt's character, how she played her character, great. Like, from the trailers, I was like, she's not going to be in it that much. But she killed it.
Dude, great.
Was not expecting that from her. And that one scene where she's like, she's got to testify in the appeal.
That was perfect. That was her character moment.
Yes. And that right when that happened, I was like, all right, she fucking killed it.
Yep.
But she was getting interrogated, basically, and they thought they had her on the ropes because she, in real life, she might have had a communist card.
Right.
And she did, blah, blah,
and it's all
but she threw it away.
Legal semantics and all that.
And they thought they had her, and, like, she was going to fold and, like, be a weak witness for Oppenheimer. But then she flipped a switch and just fucking got the prosecutor on his heels. And, it was just perfect.
It was great. It was a good scene.
Embarrassed him. It was great.
Dane DeHaan's in the movie.
Yeah?
Oh, I didn't mean to. Were you done?
No. We can talk about that real quick before we talk about
that surprised Jacob on the car ride home. I'm like, hey, did you recognize Dane DeHaan?
Yeah.
And he's like, what's that? I'm like, oh, Carrie Osborne from. He's like, halfway through the movie, I was like,
yeah.
Is that Harry Osborne?
It's hard to tell.
He's changed, but he looks great.
Changed.
Han Solo's in the movie.
I mean, I recognized him, but I was like, why do I know that? I did that so much during this movie.
Yeah.
I was like, because they did a lot of like makeup to make everybody look older than they are, and I was just like, that dude looks familiar. Yeah, that's him. Like Einstein, the dude that plays Einstein. I'm like, I recognize him from somewhere.
What a deep
cut. I know he is from something I've seen. Sure enough, he's the dude in Dark Knight Rises, the prisoner that puts Bruce Wayne's spine back into work. Yeah. But the whole time I did that with so many people in this movie. The Alex Wolff from the Naked Brothers Band.
Yeah.
He had a small role, killed it. Josh Peck.
Yeah. They got 2 Nickelodeon. Wait, I remember too. Some guy said Roderick was in here, but I don't recognize him now that I'm thinking back on it. Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm sorry.
I never saw the movies.
Well, I gotta look this up online. I'll maybe put
probably
something in the edit.
So many people,
dude. There were so many, and you're just watching the movie. You're like, holy cow! Like, Nolan's just got the pick of the litter,
and they kept on saying names, and it worked for the movie. But I think history people will appreciate it. Like, they'll say the name, and everybody will be like, oh.
Well, for me, I'll just say this personally, was that I didn't know if it was just getting confusing or it was near the end of the movie. But after the bomb drops, for me, I was kind of a little confused by the Strauss storyline because Strauss is not it's not that he's an underdeveloped character. It's just that he appears in Oppenheimer's life at such a later date. That it felt so disconnected from the rest of the movie.
With how they're telling the story, they're telling it through Strauss's point of view.
Yes.
So he's making it seem like he's a good guy in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Turns out he wants to destroy Oppenheimer.
That he has a personal vendetta against Oppenheimer.
So and I know briefly about his story, but like it pans out how it happened in the movie, basically, where he just wants to...
Where he kind of suffered he publicly kind of humiliated Strauss, Oppenheimer did, at a hearing, but they show that in the movie, but it's obviously post-Manhattan Project, so I was like, I could see narratively why it was a disconnect, but it was kind of tough at a certain point to be like...
the history of how there was like because they bring up the name a lot, the ACC, it was the committee committed to the atomic portion of the military, and Oppenheimer was on it, and Strauss got appointed to it too. So that's what started the whole dragging Oppenheimer through the mud thing.
Right. It was just obviously just because of the time element of it. There was a part of me that I'm like, well, this feels a little disjointed. So it was.
Yep.
It was just like, why? What's going on here? Why am I watching? What's going? But ultimately, doesn't work against the movie. The movie's fantastic. I highly recommend seeing it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yep.
It's one of the best. I mean, I know it sounds, but like when some people are like, this is a movie. This is a film. This is more like a film. This is just something that is one of the. It's so well crafted.
Yeah.
This movie.
I forget if it was on another podcast that we did, but I was talking about how I was talking with my coworker about this movie, and he was like, "People are gonna go see this in the theater because even from the trailer, it's kind of indie-esque of like the how it's trying to tell a story and everything."
You know what? I'll say this: that I don't know. I don't know if indies, but it's more. Realized going into this, I'm like, wow, I'm glad I watched this documentary because I'll say that he doesn't hold your hand.
No,
Chris Nolan does not hold your hand
not.
through this movie.
No.
So if you'll be rewarded if you read
know
up
it.
and you're like, okay, this is what happened.
Yeah.
But
you can still follow it if you don't know
I agree.
what everything is around.
But if you didn't,
you'll get a greater appreciation of the movie if you know
exactly. If you go into a blind like, hey, what's playing tonight? Oppenheimer. Okay, I'll see that movie. You'll be like, I'm lost. What are they talking about here? Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe not to that extent because you'll still be able to appreciate the movie.
I think in some of the scenes when they're talking real fast, about something going on, if you don't know,
you'll get the general gist of it. But there's a lot of the deeper stuff. You'll be like, oh wow,
World War II is so huge, and they're just talking about literally the Manhattan Project. So they say something off reference. If you don't know what's going on, it's going to go over your head, but you still get the gist of what's going on.
So yeah,
they don't go too hard into the full history of World War II, which was a smart move. Not mentioning like different battles going on or nothing. Like they talk about the Germans and they don't specifically talk about.
They just don't throw dates at you.
Yeah. Other than July 15th was when the
Trinity test happened. Yeah.
Because of where
the deadline
Truman was meeting with Stalin and Churchill in Europe to discuss the war and everything. So that's that was before the conference, July 15th. That was like the only date.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree. It's just I would say that Nolan doesn't hold your hand.
Nope.
And he expects you to pay attention.
Yes.
Those are only the two things, but it's
not hard
movie.
to pay attention.
No. Oh, it's so good.
So but I want to talk about Murphy.
Oh, good.
Let's talk about
this.
Murphy.
Will be perfect because I'm like I was gonna say like what awards are you thinking this thing? Because Murphy was perfect in this movie.
If he does not get Best Actor, I'm gonna be pissed.
It is going to be a crime if this guy doesn't get the Best Actor. He deserves every award. It was literally perfect casting.
He looks like Oppenheimer. He sounds like Oppenheimer.
He's a fantastic actor.
Yes.
He is so good in this movie. It's going to be probably, like one of the best performances you'll ever see. I think.
For sure.
It is so good.
Yeah, he deserves everything.
He knocked it out of the park. See, I think this movie's going to get Best Picture. This movie's, I would say, 99%, because, 99.9, he will get Best Actor for it.
If he doesn't, it's a crime.
I think.
And I will just, I already don't take them seriously.
Yes. I say this every year. It's the same thing. I don't really take them seriously. I don't really care. But it's like when there's such an obvious right answer and you're like, dude, this is the one. It's infuriating when it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. This should be obvious.
And sorry, just to get a little sidebar. This is such I hope, okay? This should sweep the awards because the fact that the last Oscars, it was everywhere, everything all at once that swept. I hate that movie. That's a terrible movie and it just got all the awards. This is legitimately a great movie. And if they don't reward Nolan because he's a acknowledged
big blockbuster,
he's an acknowledged director and already has a fan base and doesn't need it. That's ridiculous.
Stupid. Absolutely ridiculous.
Because that's almost what people were talking about. The Fabelmans, and it was another movie of last Oscars where they're like, look, him and Scorsese. If Scorsese had one thing out, I can't remember. Was it Scorsese? I don't know. Well, anyway, everyone was like, Steven Spielberg already has all his accolades. He has all these achievements. He doesn't need another Oscar. Give it to the new guys. For this one, no. Okay, if you got it, if you have it, you have it. And this one, I don't think Oppenheimer is the movie to beat. Okay?
For sure. It set the bar high already.
The only thing that's coming up that I'm like, has even a fighting chance, and it's the underdog chance, is Napoleon, okay? But I don't think Phoenix is going to beat Murphy. Murphy is going to win.
I don't think that movie is going to because this movie made you think.
Dude, this movie
actually.
is fantastic.
Like, it made you think about the world and everything. Napoleon's not going to do that. It's going to be It's going to be a great pick on Napoleon, but it's not going to make you think like, oh, like when the credits rolled and Oppenheimer came out on the screen, I was like, fuck. But like Murphy in this movie, like his mannerisms, I don't know if you picked it up, but like his eyes in this, like he's always really good with like when he's not talking, like in Peaky Blinders and everything. Like just his facial expressions is great, but I don't know what it is. His eyes in this movie got me. Like you could tell
Nolan knows how to shoot him.
Like you feel like you know what Oppenheimer, not like you literally know what he's thinking, but like you can see in his eyes like
yes, it's the most nuanced, perfect acting, and it's great. And that's another thing is I feel like it's so funny that you say the eyes because that's the reason why. Like one of the things that stood out to him, if you watch Batman Begins, he's constantly taking off his glasses, and it's because Nolan wanted his eyes to be on the movie screen, nothing in between it. It's like I just want to see. So if you watch Jonathan Crane, he's not wearing his glasses.
He's always taking his glasses off,
and it's because Nolan was like his eyes are amazing. So I think Best Picture, it'll be Best Picture, Best Leading Actor. I think Robert Downey Jr. is going to get Best Supporting.
He definitely could.
I think he will because I mean, obviously we don't keep. We'll do a podcast when the nominees are released and all that. I think he's going to get Best Supporting. I think Emily Blunt's strong enough to actually get a nomination as well.
For supporting actress.
Yeah, because I don't think Florence Pugh is in enough of the movie.
She's not in
enough of the movie to actually get.
I don't know if Blunt's character will be in there a lot.
Well, that's
enough
the thing
for her to be nominated, but she could.
I think it'll get Best Effects.
Yeah, but the great thing about it was it wasn't effect heavy.
Oh yeah.
But when the effects were there,
you were like, "Mwah."
Yeah.
Cinematography. Well, I think it has a fair chance for cinematography.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
I think costuming maybe honestly will go to Barbie, but
probably
I don't. I'm sure this will get a nomination.
Yeah.
But this thing should get so many. I mean, it's one of the first. It's one of the movies you've seen. It's been a long time since I've seen a movie that made me go like kind of be in awe of it, and just the craft of it. And you're like, wow, that was really well made.
Yeah. It deserves all the rewards. I'm calling it. I don't even care if they don't give it to them. They got mine.
But it's just, I mean, I can't, because it's not even like, oh, wow, it took a while to get into this. Oh, it took a while. Everything, perfect pace.
It started
the story
right
structure's
out,
perfect.
away.
And that was the thing that I was like, Chris Nolan has a real bad habit of making things unnecessarily convoluted. So I was a little apprehensive. No, in this one, it was done so well.
Yeah.
And it actually lended to his style.
Yes.
So when you I will honestly say, I won't say this is, if we do a bracket movie system, I guess spoilers and what I'm going to be repping, but I think it's his best movie.
I think so. I think everything he's learned from everything accumulated into this film.
We will, you know what? It will take some time, and we're probably going to do a Chris Nolan bracket video sometime soon. Does he have an even number of movies? I hope so.
We'll figure it out.
But we're going to do a bracket system, and we'll put his movies against each other, find out what we feel about that, if that holds true.
That'll be fun.
Little teaser for our next video. But I mean, I don't know if there's anything else I can cover. It's such a good movie that I don't even know. I want to
talk. How did it make you feel?
Man.
Like watching the movie. Like, what did you feel towards the end, during it?
I just thought that it was, I'll say this. I had this thought during the movie where I was almost like, well, I don't think anyone else needs to make a movie about the Manhattan Project ever again. Like,
yeah.
It was one of those things where I'm like, I think he covered this person and what he did so thoroughly. I'm like, I don't think you need to see another movie about this. It is just, I mean, it's a very good biopic. It is.
It's so amazing at how, like, we weren't alive during the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
but it is just amazing how well he like captured that tension of like America versus the commies. And I know communists were always like around since like the Depression era.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was always like there was a communist party in America. Like I knew about it in history, but you don't get the sense of like people hating commies until after World War II,
Right.
and the Cold War started. It is crazy to see. I mean, like we all know, like how America is with communists and everything, and we know the hatred for it. But it feels just so tense in this movie. Like being called a communist is like having a scarlet A on you, even if you denounce the party and got rid of the party.
Or it happened 20 years ago or anything like that.
And it's like a mark on your report card that you just can't get away.
It's just such a smart movie.
Yeah.
And I know that's the dumb thing too. Like there's that meme where people are like, "Oh, they watched all the movies to feel smart." This is such a well-made movie, and it knows what it's doing, and it tackles the subjects in such a smart way where you're like, "Thank goodness they did it," because they do talk about the ethical and the moral implications, and also really go through just how complex of a character Oppenheimer was, and kind of how he felt. The ending of the movie, like kind of where it just kind of that's where it hits you. You're right; it's perfect. Is literally the last minute of the movie, which is like whoa. It's just
because they build up this scene the entire movie of
him and Albert
Oppenheimer and Einstein. Because Strauss talked about it in the beginning. He was like, Einstein just walked past me, didn't even pay me any attention. Then he talks about it again, saying Oppenheimer like
poisoned him against
me, poisoned all these scientists. Like when his character starts going off the rails a little bit,
right?
Because he's losing control. And then I forget his name, the dude that plays Han Solo, his character was like, well, maybe it wasn't about you, maybe it was about something more important. They play that scene again, and you finally get to hear what they talked about.
Mm-hmm. Which is obviously, it's creative liberty, but it's such it's the theme of the movie. Well, it shows, it's kind of like the thesis of what Oppenheimer felt post-war.
Yeah,
which is like this is our own destruction. Because
in the entire movie, they talk about
atmospheric ignition.
It was a real theory when they were doing it that
the chain reaction wouldn't stop. Yeah,
they could light the entire oxygen on fire.
Right, because the nitrogen and the oxygen in the atmosphere would then have the nuclei. It would just be
an endless reaction, and just the world's destroyed.
Right, and then so the first time he goes to Einstein, he just goes like, "Hey, can you do the calculation yourself?" And then it's a perfect kind of bookend, because then when they end the movie saying, "Hey, remember when I told you to do the calculations?"
Mm-hmm.
I think we did ignite the world on fire, obviously metaphorically, but
what do you say? Like, I think we did destroy the world.
We destroyed the world by doing this.
And then it does a cut where he's in a fighter jet, like in a cockpit.
Oh yeah, that was a bit experimental. Now,
yeah, and you see all the nukes getting launched through the sky, and then
the world getting engulfed
above him, and then the fire of the world, and that's when you're like, shit.
And that's another, when you were saying, because it gives you a great scope of what America and what life was like during those years.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with regards of like communist parties or sympathies, even sympathizers and all that stuff. But then also it does this really good job in kind of saying like, this guy really kind of, didn't, but he was a major part in kind of the world we live in right now.
Yeah, the theme is that he changed,
and he did
the world to what it is now.
This is why it's a real think piece of a movie. You're like, Jeez.
Yeah,
it's obviously something you don't think about every day, but you're like, wow. Yeah,
and they talk about his moral dilemma with the H-bomb.
Yep.
Like it's the H-bomb's not a huge part of the movie per se, but it's the whole reason why Robert Downey Jr.'s character is going after him, because he doesn't like the H-bomb.
Oh, it's just...
Teller's character, who always wanted to do the H-bomb from the beginning, was in there. So, like, the whole thing with the H-bomb's in there, that he doesn't want it because, like, the whole escalation thing. It's like anime, where power levels just keep on... You get so powerful, then the next powerful thing comes along. But, yeah, it really gets you thinking.
It's so good.
Yeah. So I do also want to talk about the bomb drop scene.
Okay.
Because I was not expecting it to go the way that it did. And I really
Oh.
liked it. The whole time, like, the TikToks and all the memes are building up is that the bomb's going to be so loud.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that
yeah. Oh,
even
you're right.
I've heard
Oh,
reviews.
that's so funny
like,
hearing it
I
from
thought I
that.
heard reviews, like pre-screenings, that they're like, this movie's loud. I did not get that at all.
And especially considering the creative decision they made is perfect.
Yes, and I loved it. The creative decision was that all you see is the fire from the bomb.
It's silent.
It's silent though.
But then when the shockwave hits, that's when you hear the noise,
You
and
hear
it's
a
all
boom.
and it's just the noise of everything rattling and everything like that.
Yeah, but like you get a good minute
Of
of
silence.
silence, and you get that like deep feeling in you. You're like, oh damn, things just changed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like if they would have just did a loud explosion, because in the trailer it's a loud explosion and you hear fire and all that. But I'm glad it was silent because you really just got to sit there and think.
I'm interested in the behind the scenes on that because obviously they reproduced an explosion, but I didn't know
Yeah, I don't know
what
how
they
they
used
did
because it looked very pyro.
Yes.
And in every not to be, but like whenever you see an atomic bomb drop or an H bomb drop in footage, it's not very pyrotechnic. It's just a lot. I mean, it's like a mushroom cloud. Where this
Yeah.
one it looked like fire and flame, and so it's not.
I'm
It's
a
not
little
something
sad because the people that were there described it going purpley too.
I
And
wish.
I wish they would have just did a split second of like purple.
So I know. So it's kind of like I like that they really wanted to catch a real explosion on film, but at the same time, I'm like if you could do I would have liked maybe even if they just did it for the behind the scenes of like. No, I mean the special feature. Like if they had someone do a CGI render of what an atomic bomb actually looked like, then it would have been like.
I mean, it looked like an atomic bomb.
See, I don't
but
know.
from the description, like there's this description of after like a minute there was like a purplish hue to it.
The big thing is the explosion didn't let me down because honestly, what made that scene so perfect was the building tension. It was so good.
Yes.
And then when it finally dropped, I mean, it could have been a terrible explosion. I wouldn't have minded because it was so perfectly paced, the tension and everything of just this thing about to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
It was great.
Is there anything I can't? I mean, it's one of those movies where I think all you can do is tell someone like, "Look, this is
Go watch it."
Go watch it. It's ridiculous because all I could really talk about was the performances in this review because the movie itself was so good.
Yeah, and like the 70mm is cool, and I think you should see it in 70mm because I think it made the film look better. The little like you could see the like I love seeing the holes.
If you like that aesthetic and you really like seeing
I think
something,
it adds to the movie.
I'd say it has more tactile feel about it. So if you are interested in that, see it in 70mm. If you don't mind, I wouldn't dissuade you. If
it's not close to you and you have to go like 50 miles out to see it in 70mm, sure, we're gifted with our theater that we have the possibility of doing it, I guess. But if you had the opportunity to, definitely see it in 70mm.
But it's just such a great movie. Highly recommend. Literally, the only other movie I've ever seen talk about the Manhattan Project was a movie called Fat Man and Little Boy, and it was starring Paul Newman and John Cusack.
I'm also glad they did not show the bombings of
Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
They did need to do it, and I'm glad it just happened off screen.
Well, you know what? Because here's the thing. I know it's kind of stupid because the title of the movie is Oppenheimer, but it just shows things from really Oppenheimer's perspective. He didn't see any of that. He heard it on the radio. I mean, it was...
Well, and it shows that by that point it's not his anymore.
Oh, you're right. It's so good. And there's even lines in the movie like, we built the bomb. We don't say if it's going to be... We don't have no say in whether or not it's going to be used. We have no say in that. But it's just so good.
They mention it, but he did help choose the spots where they're going to go and everything. And there's a brief thing where once the bomb detonated, he's telling people like, the altitude that they should do it because he helped them where they're going to drop the bomb, how they're going to drop the bomb. But yeah, by that point, it's not his anymore, and I'm glad they didn't show it.
Such a good movie, highly recommend. It's just it's how I feel when it almost it's like when something like this happened. It makes me kind of relate back to when people, in the 50s or something, when Hitchcock would come out with a new movie, and they're like, "Oh, Hitchcock's new movie, I gotta go see it." Or Spielberg, in the early 80s, people were like, "Oh, Spielberg's new movie's out." That's our kind of relation. The fact that Nolan does a movie, you're like, I've got to see this new Nolan movie.
Oh, for sure. When I saw the trailer, I was like, I have to see this.
I'm just sold. And you know what? But I will say that, just because I know there's a lot of Nolan fanboys, I like a lot of his movies, but there's a lot of movies of his that I don't really rep and I don't really enjoy.
And his last two have been questionable.
That's the thing is I can say I don't like Tenet. I think the dialogue is so dry, it's a choking hazard. It is. I don't like Tenet. And then the one before Tenet was Dunkirk, and I thought it was he made it too convoluted. So I like Nolan, but I wasn't hesitant because I thought this movie looked so good, but his last two movies didn't inspire a lot of confidence for me. But this one was, just almost perfect, really. It's just great.
Everything came together perfect.
It's so good.
We could go on hours and talking about
I almost can't because I'm like, the movie movie speaks for itself so well that I'm like, I can't even really. I feel almost unqualified to talk about it.
Oh, we are for sure unqualified. It is late. We're tired. We're rambling.
It's just so
but
good.
We wanted to talk about it.
Exactly. So hopefully you enjoyed it.
We didn't forget anything, did we?
Dude.
That we want to talk about?
I feel like there was one character. Oh, well, Casey Affleck was in it. That's a good character moment.
Yeah, Casey Affleck had another small role, but he killed it.
I don't think that there was. The best way to say this is there's no bad performance in this movie, which is actually a real good thing, and it talks a lot about the actors because obviously I always felt from his previous movies that Nolan is more of a technical director than an actor's director. So it's like, if you're an actor in a Nolan movie, it's like, well, it's sink or swim for you. Either you know how to act or you don't. Because I don't think
it's very clear.
Yeah, I don't think Nolan actually can get a performance out of someone. It's more like he just expects actors to do their job.
Yeah.
And so in this movie, they just got great actors for every role, and they all could act and know what they do.
Yeah.
Because I will say, in Tenet, I thought John David Washington was not good in that movie.
Well, you just don't like him.
Okay, well, I don't know about that. That was really the only movie I seen him in. All I know is, it was a bone dry dialogue, but I didn't like him. And it was weird because I know it was younger actors in Dunkirk, but it just felt like they didn't really have much meat on the bones. You know what I'm saying? It was just like what that character was. We can revisit Dunkirk, but anyway, we're getting off topic. All I'm saying is that this movie was just firing on all cylinders. There was not one bad thing about this movie.
Yeah, I can't think of one.
It's just so good. Mwah.
And I think even like with the latest movie we saw, The Flash, after thinking about it for a while, I see flaws.
Oh yeah,
and way more flaws.
Like any movie.
And I think about it more, and the dopamine goes down.
Exactly.
I'm like, it wasn't as good as I thought it was.
Which is funny because you can actually listen to our recording of that. We were high on dopamine. We just watched it. On dopamine. And that's the thing is,
and yes, we are high on dopamine now.
But I don't know if dopamine's the right one, but we are high on something. But no, you're so right because I was almost like afterwards, and you're like, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, I don't know. I kind of regret not marinating a bit on The Flash, but in this movie, I'm like, I don't think my opinion will change.
I don't regret what we said about The Flash.
Neither do
I. I still believe what I said. Like it's. But like
the way we conveyed it, it was very glowing.
Yes. But thinking about it more, it was like, yeah. But this movie, like, I can rewatch this,
dude. This movie,
it's not a long. Like, I will not rewatch the latest Avatar because of how long it is, and it's not worth it.
I'm with you on that one.
This one, even though I already know what's happening and it's history already, I will go see this again. I might have an opportunity to see it on IMAX 70 millimeter.
Please update us on that as it goes on. Dude, I'm so glad I saw this movie. It is so good.
I feel like I want to say something else.
And we saw it late. Okay, we got a 10 o'clock showing, so it's not like...
Will would already be pissed. We're already at the movie theater. It's late.
It's a 3-hour movie. And the fact that I'm just like, I don't regret any bit of this speaks to how great the movie is. Yeah. It is so good.
10 out of 10. 11 out of 10.
I mean, it's just... I almost... Yeah. It's so good. Watch it if you can.
There is a point I am missing that I want to talk about.
We'll marinate on it for a while. We'll do we'll leave it blank, and I can edit it, and you can think of the point, and then we can sign off.
They respected the history. They delivered great performances. Everything was great. The respect to the history I love the most, because they even bring up that they talk about it really early that Oppenheimer was the first one to think about black holes.
What?
Yeah.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, they in the beginning when, with the stars and everything, he's the first one to conceptualize a black hole.
Really?
I'm pretty sure. Again,
editor's note if we
not
can
historians.
Do that. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure he was the first one to conceptualize a black hole.
Oh, I know what you're talking about when he was talking about the mass of the star collapsing.
Yeah, that's a black hole.
Even light. Yeah,
hole.
He didn't say the words black hole, but I know exactly what you're saying. Okay, yeah, I was expecting almost like I say, Nolan doesn't hold your hand on things.
Nope.
But
but if you know,
you know.
It's there.
Nolan is the epitome of if you know, you know.
Yes.
Anyway, this has been Barely Functioning.
Go see the movie.
It's been
Do it.
Late night podcast. It's a late pod. So the late night pods, and we are Barely Functioning. But man, thanks for listening. If you did, go watch the movie.
Please.
Have a good one.